So putting the link to the material for today in the chat. And Stuart, you can go ahead and start recording.
Yeah, I just started it.
Okay, excellent. All right. Well, hi, everyone, to week 8. Doing something pretty different this week. I'm going to give an introduction to ggplotting in ggplot. And the material that I'm going to be covering is on the website, in the workshop website under the weekly notes. And then it's down at the bottom, ggplot 2. Now, what I'm going to talk about today is oriented towards those who are not very experienced at all with ggplot. You've heard of it, maybe, probably. Maybe you've tried it, but you don't really use it. Or you've tried it and you've gotten really frustrated and didn't get in the habit of using it. So my goal today is to get you started and help you understand how to change your plotting workflow so that it works with ggplot. And by the end, I hope that you'll see, oh, wow, this isn't that hard. This is actually pretty easy. And secondly, see how learning ggplot can really, really speed up your plotting. And it just takes no time to do pretty complicated plots just with the information that you're going to see today. And I'm just going to go over some really basic stuff. Even with the stuff you see today, you're going to be able to do all kinds of plots. And I'll also say that what I showed you today is probably about 80% of what I actually use. My job is not making like absolutely super amazing plots. So I don't need to know all the like amazing things that ggplot can do. I am to do all the plotting I need with just the basics. Even with the basics, I can make really nice, complicated plots. Okay, so that's one thing to keep in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is that after today, if you want to get into using ggplot, there are a gazillion tutorials online. So you can just go to that, really get in depth into it. One thing that I personally found when I started off and was getting started with ggplot is I get frustrated with the tutorials because they jumped right into the ggplot workflow, the way ggplot wants to work. And I was coming from a base R plotting workflow, and I just was like, why would I structure my data that way? My data never looked that way. This is not working for me, and I would just get frustrated. So I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to start with the basic plotting workflow and kind of show you how you kind of do the same thing in ggplot, or how you sort of tweak your workflow so that it'll work with ggplot. I'll kind of go through that, and then at the end, I'm going to switch more to a more classic ggplot workflow. But I find that this workflow that I'm going to show you actually works for a number of the plots that I need to make just kind of easier. All right, so I'm going to be going through the material on this, but I'm just going to be doing it live so you can see how, oops, not there, how if I were just coding, how this would look. Okay, so this uses the ggplot library. So load that up. Good morning. Okay, so now let's think about if I wanted to do just a regular plot with base. the base plotting function plot. So the workflow that I would do is first I need to define what x is. And probably I would just call plot with my x just in there, but I want to be a little explicit here. So let's, this is kind of like when you're, you have your first homework in computer science, and they say, okay, tell the computer how to open the fridge, right? So you're gonna, show all the steps. So I'm gonna show all the steps here. I'm not plotting. Okay, so first I need to define what my x is. Let's use the empty cars data set. It just comes in R, and let me. Okay, so that's just a data frame, and has these columns here, and I'm going to define the x to be the, let's see, MPG column. So that's going to be my x, and then my y, I'm going to call my y val. And I'm going to use horsepower. Okay. And now if I wanted to make just a basic plot, I would just say plot x val type equals p. I don't have to do the type equals point. That's the default, but I'm going to do that here to be explicit. And over here, you can see the plot. All right. So that was my workflow in plot, in just a really simple plot. How do I change that to that workflow to do ggplot? Make the same plot in ggplot. Okay, so first thing, same thing, going to decide on the x, going to decide on the y, but now I've got to add a step in there for ggplot, which is I need to put this in a data frame. Just the way it is. So I'm going to call that df, and I'm going to make a data frame, and my x is my same thing, empty cars, MPG, and I call that val, empty cars, HP. I've added that one step to my workflow. Okay, and then in ggplot, I will have two steps to my plot creation. First step is I'm going to kind of create the plot object, and that is what the call to ggplot is doing. ggplot is not like plot. It's not actually doing the plotting. It's just creating the plot object, and I'm going to then add things onto that object. So it's an object. I'm going to give it a name. Let's call it P1. Okay. There's that call, and this needs, well, I could set it up just like that. I could just call it just like that. You're going to see an example of that in a moment. But I can send it arguments, and typically we will. And the things that it will typically require are, first, you're going to tell your plot what data you're going to use in your plot. I'm going to use data frame. That's my data. And the next thing you need to tell it are what you are going to use for your x and what you're going to use for your y, because I'm making an x versus y plot. So for different types of plots, you might need different things. But that's what this AES is doing. It's telling you what do you want for your x and y. So I tell it my x is going to be the x column in DF, and the y is going to be that val column. Okay. So I set that up. That is now this plot object. If I do P1, you can see it just sort of is this empty plot. I haven't added anything to that, but I've created it. It's got X and Y axes. It actually got, you can see here, it sort of set up my axes ranges from the data that I sent it. But that's not very interesting. So the next step is we're going to add on things to that. So this is our P1, that's our plot object, and now we're going to add on what we want to add to that. And generally, the names will start with geom, and I'm going to add points. Added our points. So that is how your workflow changes when you use your ggplot. So let's review that. You're going to decide on your X and your Y. So this is just for a simple basic XY plot. You decide on your X and Y. You're going to put that into a data frame. You then create the plot object, which is defining your X and your Y, and then you add on whatever you want to that object. So it's a little bit different workflow, but it's really not that hard. Usually, when I would make a call to ggplot, if I were doing just a simple XY plot like that, I would put it all together and it would look like this. So I would do this in one line. So there's my ggplot EF. This is called the aesthetic AES. So that's X. So that's the X column, and the Y is going to be the val. Okay. So what I need in this AES depends on what I'm about to do. I know that I'm making an XY plot, so that's why I know I need the XY. And then I do the geom, just do it in one call. All right. So I'll pause for a moment here, and as usual, I've got the chat line open. Just put your questions in there, and I'll answer those as I go along. And again, if somebody else has an answer to the question, feel free to jump in and answer it. So Rebecca here. Okay, so that's just a really basic XY plot. But now we'd like to add some things to that plot. Okay, so okay, somebody asked here, empty cars was already a data frame. Yes, I could have just passed in empty cars, absolutely. So in here, I could have done that. Except, right, it's not X and val. I need to do MPG, and this is okay. So same plot. Okay, but in general, right, you're going to be making your own data frames. Okay, so one thing to keep in mind is that this P1 that I created is it's a ggplot object. That's kind of important to keep in mind, that you're working now in this object-oriented plotting environment. You're going to see how that is going to change things. Let's go back here. Okay, so P1 was just that sort of the X and Y axis. And then I added points to that. Well, let's assign that now to the object. Now, if I type P2, let's look at what P2 is. We're working in an object environment. We always want to know what our object class is. Okay, it's still a ggplot. It's surprising. And I do that, and now it shows up. So now, a nice thing about that is I can add things to that plot. So let's say I wanted to add a line to that. So I can say that. I can just add on plus, and then the command for a line is that. Now it adds lines to that. Nice. Okay. So super simple XY plot. Now, question, somebody, I'll stop for a moment. Do you have to pass the entire data frame as an argument, or can you pass a slice instead? Oh, you can most definitely pass a slice. So, you know, so I could say subset empty cars, what is it? Cylinder equals 1. Can't have a car with 1 cylinder. Okay, let's do four cylinders. Okay, great. So there, those are just the 4-cylinder ones. Okay. So you can definitely do that, passing subsets like that. Okay, so let's now talk about how we alter plots. And let me first show you the example back with our plot example. So let's go, that was here to the console. Okay. So that was my original kind of blah plot right there. And now in plot, how we would change things is we're going to pass in things like, I change that to both, so it's going to have points and lines. We're going to change the line width to 2. We are going to change the point type to 21. We're going to color the outside of our 21, our filled circles. Our outside of our filled circles red, and we're going to color the inside of our circle blue. Let's see what happens. So let's make it bigger. That was too small. Now we can change our for big. Okay. All right, so now we have this plot here, and you see, and it's got these big blue circles here. By the way, I don't have all of those commands here of altering things. I don't have all of them memorized. I did have to look up how to change the plot size with CDX. So, but most of these should be pretty familiar to you. So that's how you're altering things with plot. You're just sort of sending in these arguments into your plot call. So let's see what that looks like with ggplot. And this is where people can get a bit confused and messed up working with ggplot, because how ggplot deals with these attributes is fundamentally kind of different. So there are 2 things. Well, okay. So you need to understand that there are 2 ways that ggplot can change the attributes. So things like attributes would be like things like the color of your lines. It can do it fixed. So you just fix, say, make this color blue, make this line blue, or you can do it dynamically. So you could say, okay, make all the 4-cylinder blue, all the 8 cylinders red, but you allow ggplot to make that decision about how it's going to color things. This is going to be kind of dynamic based on whatever factor you tell it to use to choose its colors. Okay, so like with you said, I want you to do the colors by cylinder. It's each cylinder type is going to have a different color. And that's different than saying, I want all my lines to be blue. So let's first do the fixed example, because that's similar to that workflow we just used for plot. Because we told plot, hey, I want all the points to have a blue background. Okay, so let's do that in ggplot. Okay, so let's see, how are we doing? We had ggplot and that, and then we had our AES was x equals x, y equals, I said val, and we had our geom point. That was the original one. You see we got black points there. And now if I pass in col here, blue, it will turn blue. So that is an example of fixed. I told it make those points blue. So within the ggplot, when you make a call for something that's going to do something, like here I add points, like this is not plotting something. This is just setting up the plot here, okay? But this geom point is doing something. It's adding the points. And in here, if I put my attributes outside of the AES, they're fixed. If I put it inside, they're dynamic. So let's see some examples of that, because that can be a little confusing in the beginning here. So I started here. So remember I said the ggplot does not actually do anything. Setting things up. And so if I do blue here, nothing happened. It didn't happen because I didn't put it on something that actually makes that actually puts something on the plot. So I needed to put it there on GG point. Okay. It's going to be similar if I did line. There, told it make that line blue. So pretty easy there. In terms of figuring out what attributes you can set, you just do question mark geom line, question mark geom point. It's going to show you all the attributes that you can set. Okay, so now let's go back and see what happens if we do this. So we're going to say call equals blue, and this is a really tempting thing to do in the beginning. You think, okay, that's where that goes, right? Aesthetic, that should be like colors and things, and it does, but it's going to set it dynamically. So let's see what happens here. Well, yikes, that's not what I wanted at all. First off, they're not blue. And secondly, look at it, you still got this legend over here. It says color, and it calls it blue, and it's red. Ah, what happened? Okay, so whenever you put something, an attribute, so attributes like color, in that AES, it's going to treat that as a factor. So what you just told it by putting, or what I just told it by putting color blue here is I said, all right, so I want you to make my colors based on this factor that I'm going to add. I didn't put it in my data frame, but I'm going to tell you about it anyhow. Just going to add it on there for me, and I'm going to call that attribute blue. They're called it blue. It's not a color, it's the name of this factor. I call that factor blue. And that is what is showing up here. So that is why that happened. You didn't call it, this is not the color, this is the name of the things that are going to get colors. So that's what's going on. That's why that didn't work. It would be the same also if in my geom line, I can also set up my colors dynamically. And here I do that by doing this. That is also not going to work. Oh, I said line. Well, anyhow, it works. It's the same thing for the lines and points. And you can see that is not a blue line. Okay? So that's what's going on. When you want to fix things, you've got to put that attribute outside of the AES. Okay. So let's see here. So question from someone, so it won't throw an error if that factor doesn't exist? No, it won't throw an error. It will just sort of add that factor in for you. But it won't have a name exactly. Well, maybe it's called a color. So it's added a column, it sort of virtually added this column to your data frame that's called, in this case, color. I mean, you can tell what the name it gave it, you just put it right there. Okay, so it's just, yeah, it's trying to figure it out for you. And this is a really important thing to know about ggplot, is that ggplot will try to think for you. Sometimes that can mess you up. Often that can mess you up. Okay. So yeah, I showed you that example. So let's see some more examples of using this fixed feature where we can tell it use this color. So let's do okay. I'm going to make things a little more complicated here. So I'm setting up my plot there, and now I'm going to add something. So I'm going to do a geom point. And so I'm not going to put things in AES. I'm going to make it fixed. Okay, so let's add some things here. So let's see. I'm going to say so the shape is 21, so that's what I was using in that plot call. I'm going to say the color is blue. The fill, let's say, is I want to make it like that. I mean, that column. Much better. Okay, I'm going to make this red. I'm going to make the fill blue. And then I'm going to make the size 6. And I'm going to make a little bit of transparency. And then I'm going to make, there we go. So there I just, manually changed all those attributes, and it's kind of like that plot that I showed with the base, except that I think the main difference there is I added that transparency output. Oh. If I call ggplot without the plot there. Oh. There we go. Okay. So that now looks like that base plot. Okay. So in that case, I made all the points to be blue. I could pass in a value that is the same length as the number of points. So let's say I want to do it by the empty cars carburetor, number of carburetors. So there now, like different carburetors have different colors. Okay. So good. Should do that. Any questions on that kind of stuff? Okay, so let's see one more. Yes, so it's assigning the color by carb type in that case. And it figures out something intelligent if like you sent it color. So in this case, it's like you're taking, giving a color for 4, 8, 6. And it's going to figure out something intelligent if you sent it names of things that it can't really figure out. And it can also even figure out something fairly intelligent to do if I send it a continuous variable like so it's like it's figuring out something to do, even though like the MPG is a continuous number. And I could do it for the car names too. figure out, make a guess of, okay, fine, I'll do that. All right, so let's see another example here where I'm going to have different aesthetics for my points and my lines. So I'm going to assign this to an object this time. Right, okay. So I'm going to say P1, and I'm going to add on a line, and I am going to make that color blue, and I'm going to make the size of that line too, so nice and thick. Then I'm going to add on points, and I'm going to make those red, and the size equals 3. So I find that kind of workflow where I have my my different aesthetics, you know, separated out for my different things. Pretty intuitive, works well for me. Okay, how do you find the possible arguments for that? Yeah, so you're going to have to look in whatever plotting call that you're calling. So like geom-line, geom-plot, geom-bar, and if you do the question mark there, it's going to show up somewhere there. Details. Yeah, there you go. So here, there's going to be a line that's going to say aesthetics. So here you can look and you can see the things that you can set. Okay, so that's how you search that. Okay, so let me assign this T2. Okay, so now I've assigned that to an object. So now I can just call that. And I showed you earlier that once you've defined that, you can add things to it. So let's add something to that. I'm going to add a column plot, and I'm going to do a dodge, means put them side by side. And you can see how you can just add something onto that, like a title to that also. That's a really nice feature with ggplot is you can just keep building things like that. You define the base plot, and then you can change things around. You can also go back and change like the colors of lines and stuff, and we're going to see an example of that in a moment. Okay, so let's talk about labels and limits. That's really a common thing that we need to do in a plot. So let's go back here. So here was my base plot. And how would we do this in base R? So we would do xlab equals, what was that? And y label equals new label. Okay. So I would just use xlab and ylab. That's going to put those labels on there. I can change the limits by using, say, ylim equals, and then give it 2 values, 0 to 1,000, say. Okay. So that's going to change the limits. In ggplot, works very similar to that, except instead of saying this equals something, it's going to be a function call. So let's see an example of that. Okay. So let's go back. Remember, there's our P2, And now let's add some X and Y labels. So the call is just XLab. It's nice. It's easy to remember. YLab. There we go. You see you've got the labels on there now. Okay. And then for our limits, they work, they have similar names as in the base plot. The difference is it's not ylim equals something, it's its function, so it's ylim parentheses, but we give it two values like before, like for the plot call. There we go. So that's very familiar, hopefully. Okay, so any questions on that? Is there a way to set a default for all points, lines, and colors for multiple plots? Yes, there is. And that is, or at least for like the whole like look of it, you can, and that would be in the themes. So you want to, I'm going to talk about themes next, but that's where you want to go. You want to search into how to set up a custom theme. So let's go into that. Like, how do we change the whole look of a plot? So let's look at P2, and it's got, you know, I changed the line colors here, but it's also got some other things about it. Like there's not a line here, right? It's kind of this gray-black background, and it's got these white grid lines, and you may decide, I really don't like that. And ggplot makes it super easy to change the whole look. And the way you do that is you're going to add on a theme. So let's look at the classic theme. And there we go. So that changed it, got rid of that background. It just added our nice, clean look here. Boom, boom. I can pass in all kinds of things to the theme to change other things. The font, the size of things, and to find out what the different themes are, you just do. You're just going to get the help file for one of them. So I don't know if you do help file $theme, if that actually tells you all the themes. I always have to remember the name of one of them. So like, black and white. And if I do that, then it shows me all the different themes that are possible. Now this is telling me how to modify. So you can modify, gosh, everything about it. Yeah, I forget where I found the list of all the different themes. I often Google it too. But there's a lot of different ones you can do. Here we can see, put in the black and white. See how that looks. Kind of got that square there. There's nothing there. Okay, so that's a really nice thing with this. You can just boom, change the look, and you can make your own custom theme so that all your plots have the same look. And so then you would just do, you define this thing called theme mine, and then you add that to all your calls at the all your plots at the end, and it's going to show your design. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about themes. Go ahead and, now you know they exist, and you can Google that if you need to set up a theme. But there are quite a few themes there, and probably if you're, probably one of those are going to serve your purposes. All right, so next thing we'll talk about is how do we add lines to our plots. And let's do this in base R. So if we had a plot val, that we would set that up, and if we wanted to add lines, then we would next call lines x. Let's say we want to do val. We could do a call like that. So this is actually kind of interesting here. This is kind of an interesting difference between the base and the ggplot. You'll see this. So I'm going to keep it with lines. You can see they're kind of like going all like that, and that's because the x and the y are not sorted. And plot is not going to sort them for you. It's not going to sort the x in increasing order or decreasing order for you. It's just going to plot it just the order that you gave it. ggplot is going to decide, oh, wow, you probably want these sorted. I'm going to sort them for you. It's another example of ggplot thinking for you. Okay, so that's how you do that with base call. You just sort of add that line on there, and this is your new data. And but let's break down a little bit more kind of what you're doing there. So what you're doing there is when you're adding is you have decided what x you're going to use when you added. In this case, I used the same x, but I could have used a different x. Okay. So this is being explicit that I made a decision about what the x value is that I'm adding, and I made a decision about the y value for the data that I'm adding. So now we're going to do this with ggplot. Let me redo this. Do that. I want to do it so that it's going to look like ggplot did. So I'm going to sort this order x. Okay, anyhow, that's good enough. We see I've got this shifted line there. Okay, so now let's think about how we're going to do this with ggplot. And remember, we need to do that step where we need to have a data frame. So I'm going to have my first data frame. Okay, that's for my first plot. So I think I've got that in T1. No. I'm going to make this a little simpler. T2 gives T1 plus T point. So T2, nice and simple there. Okay, and now I'm going to add on this line. And I need to make a data frame for the data that I'm going to add. So we're always going to do this step where you have data frames. So my x is going to be x, and my val2 is going to be val. I could call it val again, and I'm calling it val2 for a reason, because I'm going to show you something in a moment, but I could call it val, like I used in the other data. All right, so I've got my P2 here, there, and now I'm going to add that line. So, VM line, I need to tell it what the data for that is. It's new, because it's data frame 2, and then I need to tell it in that data frame what my x and my y are. Because, right, that data frame could have a whole lot of columns. ggplot has no way to know what X and Y you want to use. So, val 2, and now it adds that. So that's the workflow for ggplot when you're adding lines with a new data set. So it's pretty similar. You just want to add that, that step in your workflow where you put things into a data frame. And then when you call the thing that you want to add, you're going to have to tell it the data frame to use, the data, so that new data frame, and then you're going to have to tell it what your X and Y are. All right. So I want to show you one example of ggplot thinking for you, and that can kind of mess you up a little bit if you don't know that it would do this. Okay, so what if I had a typo and I called it val instead of val 2? ggplot is going to search in kind of your plot object and say, oh, wow, is there a data frame that has the column val that might work? It's the right length. Oh, hey, I'll use that. And now it's the wrong plot. If you don't know that ggplot would think that this was a good idea, this can create bugs that are just impossible to find. Okay, so just be a little bit aware of that, and just be a little cautious with ggplot that it will sometimes speak for itself in ways that can be really inexplicable. Okay, so now what I want to show you, okay, I got about 10 minutes here. I'm going to show you a better ggplot workflow that is more the way that ggplot wants to work. On the notes for today, I show how to make a legend for the things that we've just, the plots that we've just made, and it's really non-intuitive. So you just go back and look at that of how to add a legend with ggplot when you kind of manually created things this way. And the next workflow, ggplot's going to make that legend for you. Okay, so for normal ggplot workflow, if you've got your multiple lines that you're showing, and like if you watch any tutorial, you're going to see examples of this. This is the kind of the case that they're going to immediately jump to. So they're going to have say 2 data frames here. I have DF and I have DF2. So let's do here. I'm going to have to call this the same name now because I'm going to combine these two. So I had DF and DF2. And now what I want to do, so we'll say this, I'm going to call this is 1 and this is going to be val. And now what I need to do is I'm going to add on a name here. This is going to be a DF1. And then for my second one, it's going to be the same, but I call it name DF2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these together. This one data frame DF3 has both things that lines that I want to put in my plot. And now what I do is I say ggplot, okay, DF3, that's my data. Aesthetics, I need to tell it what my X is, my Y is going to be the val, and now my color is going to be name. And what is happening there? I am telling it I want you to make DF1 and DF2 different colors. That is what is happening because I put this in AES. It's going to dynamically choose what those colors are. I can come back later and tell it, hey, I didn't like your colors, but I'm not going to do that now. I'm just going to let it pick colors for me. And now I'm going to say geom line. Now you can see it's plotting both of those, and it makes them different colors, and then it automatically made that legend for me. I do geom point. That, and it makes my points different colors. They're not different shapes because I didn't tell it to change the shape based on the name. If I want it to do that, I need to tell it to do that. So I need to say, hey, make that shape. I don't know. Oh, wait. I did a typo. It says, hey, there's nothing there that calls names. Okay, there we go. So now it's making the shape different based on that. And this information here is flowing to both of these. So again, ggplot's thinking for me and saying, oh, hey, you put this here. I guess you want it for both of these. If I didn't want that to be the case, then I need to take it out of here because I say, hey, I don't want it to flow around. I want it to stay on my line. So I want my lines, their colors, to be different for the name, but I want my geom points not to have different colors. Okay? So you see how that worked? I told it here that my lines are going to be different colors, but my points don't have any aesthetic there, so they're just going to be the default, which is black. If I wanted them to be blue, both of them be blue, that means I'm saying, hey, fix it. I'm going to put this outside of the AES. Remember, it's really different. You put that call inside the AES call or outside the AES call. I can have two here. Black. Yeah, so here I'm sort of telling it, hey. Oh, never mind. Okay, I would have it that I could do that, but it would have to be the same length as the data. Okay. That'll work. Okay. Okay, never mind. Okay. What I need to do is just do that work. Okay. Right. Let's see. Question: where would you control the actual color choice by name? Don't quite understand the question to that. The question there: geom line to a point and add that list to definition call. Can you make a list? Like you want name, one name red, oh, one name blue. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Let's do. Let me assign this to a plot here. So I talk about this in the notes, which is, you know, how do you tell it what the colors you want? And it's, okay, so there's my P4. It's this thing called the scale functions. Really hard to remember, but once you use them a bit, you get used to it. And I talk about this in the notes. So it's the scale for the manual, and then pretty sure it will be, yeah. So I have to tell it, you know, what I'm talking about. It's the name, and then the values I want would be. terrible choice. Let's do blue and red. Okay, colorblind. There you go. So that's how you can like tell it which ones to use. I always forget how to do it, and I have to like Google, but just remember it's having to do with these scale functions, or you can look at the notes. I show you a few different examples in the notes. Okay, so I'm going to jump ahead in our last few minutes, and I'm going to talk about how to put your plots into grids. All right, so if you've done this in base R, you're familiar with the par call. So we do, this is how I do a 4x4 in base R. So I'm going to do plot T comma val. There, so it's got the first one there, do that again, and then it's just going to slowly fill it in there. Okay, and then probably if you're doing this, you know, like invariably you're having a futz with the margins. It's only look decent. This looks awful. They're too small, terrible. So putting things into grids is something that ggplot does fantastic. So let's do, let's see, what was my P2? Okay, there we go. There's my P2. Okay, so if I want to do a workflow that's pretty similar to that base R that I just did, where I'm kind of like saying, okay, this one's going to go here, this one's going to go there. I don't want ggplot to decide where to put it. I want to put them where I want. Then you're going to use the library that's called Grid Extra. And I can't remember if that's normally loaded when you load ggplot. It's a really common thing to use with ggplot though. Okay, so with Grid Extra, I have this command called grid arrange, and I just put my plot object. And there, it nicely arranged them for me. Okay, let's see if I have to make that a little more. So obviously, you know, I can have different plots here. Right? And you see how this one has this legend and it nicely scaled everything. There's a simple way to change the scaling here. No, in this one, scaling is going to come up in a moment. In this one, you know, I'm just telling it, hey, put these there. So look at the notes. You can see more examples to that. I want to show you one kind of cool thing to that is when you're doing your grid arrange, you can do things like add on, if I want to add on a linear regression to that fit. So say I wanted to compare those. Thinks of it, and there you go. So that's like I said, I mean, once you get familiar with this, it's so much faster. Man, I just added a linear regression. I can compare it here with and without that linear regression. It did all the scaling for me nicely. I didn't have to futz with all my margins. It makes really nice choices. You know, I could add, you know, as I'm looking at that, like, oh, hey, let's add a title on there. Boom, just like that, I've got that up there with that title. It looks decent. I didn't have to futz. And this is what when I said that this will really speed up your plotting workflow, this is an example of that. So, okay, we're a little over here, but I want to show one more example of how you can arrange things, and that is to do it dynamically. So, okay, so if I did ggplot df for ggplot df3 df x y equals val name plus maybe we saw what this was before. Then give this a name here. Let's call that P5. Okay. So now if I look at P5, that was that example I showed there. Well, now I can decide later that I want to distribute it into different panels. And all I do is this called facet wrap. And you can look at the help file for that, Google that, see lots of examples. So plot name, there we go, 5. And you can see it distributed it. Great. Tell it how many columns to do. And now for the last thing I'm going to show you, look at the notes, you're going to see some more examples of that. But I want to show you another really cool thing you can do is I can assign this to a name. It's such a cool feature, assigning things to names like that. And now I can do grid arrange P2 and P6. And it just did that. Boom. Can you imagine how many hours you suffer with trying to do that in base R? It would just take you forever. And I can just like, boom, just arrange them just like that. Super easy, really fast. All right, okay, so we're at our time. Go look at the notes. I'm going to show some other examples of what you can do, all the flexibility that you can, do. This I showed you these this geom smooth on there. The method. There's a lot of different methods in there. The low S is the common one, but like I showed the linear regression too. But you can see how easy it is to add those things onto your plots and how you can just kind of stick that right in the column. All right, so that's it for today. Everyone, have a great weekend. I'm going to stay on for a few minutes to see if you have any questions. And I just got you excited about using ggplot. Like I said, there's a gazillion resources online, and hopefully this has made the introduction so that you understand, oh, that's how it works, and just jump in and do some of those tutorials. As you said, though, 80% of what I use is just what I just showed today. I make all kinds of stuff just using this information. Okay, so I'm going to wait. And I saw your comment, Lisa. I'm going to wait for a moment, see if there's any other ones. And put this, go back here, yeah. So remember, go here. I've got onto the notes for today. I got a lot more information there. Not a lot more. I have a bit more information there and show you, how to do things, especially like legends. The manual legends with EEHashing. Automatic legends are easy. So now I'm going to hop in and look at some of these questions here. Let's see. Okay, how do you create your own theme? Let me see if there's an easier question. Can you make a list of your ggplot instructions? Add that to your ggplot data description call, a list. Hey, you know, I've never tried that, but A equals, probably not. Something like that, yeah. No. Yeah, no, you can't do it that way. You need to set up that ggplot object first. You can add things onto the object, but you can't just kind of like create strings of things like that. And then a list, it wouldn't know what to do with a list. Okay. Can you put two sets of data on the same graph when they have different names? Different names. I'm not sure what you mean by different names exactly. I mean, I showed that one example where I had that DF data frame 1 and data frame 2. So you can definitely do that. So when what was DF1? Looks like that, and then DF2 looks the same. It wouldn't have to be the same. So let's see examples. So like you do ggplot. So I'm just going to set it up. I'm not going to tell anything about it because I'm going to put the data in here. I'm going to put the data in my calls here. So point df1 AES x equals x, y equals val. And then the next one I'm going to do is geom point and empty cars. So totally different. And AES x equals, let's do a different scale, okay? And y equals MPG. So see what happens. Nothing, why did we Oh, okay. Maybe you can't do that. I'm not sure why that didn't work. I think that should have worked. I think what it wants up here is it wants some more information here. It's unhappy that I'm using this totally different aesthetics there. So yes, you can, but see that first example where I combined two different data. Okay, and then let's see, last question here. Okay, okay, so modifying your themes. Lisa asked that question, and so I don't have that information stored in my head because I rarely need to do that. But if you go into Google will answer that, or just do question mark theme. And they're going to show examples. It's not that hard to do. So you see for your theme, you can set all these different things. And just down here, and you can see the examples that they show. All right. Okay. And Lori, I will try to debug that example that I just showed, and show some more examples of how to use how to plot different data in from totally different data frames in ggplot, because I often need to do that myself, and that can be something that can be a little non-intuitive. I found it in ggplot. I mean, you just saw when I just sort of like tried to do it, even though I use ggplot all the time, I like, I got this error. So I have to hack at that a little bit. If you combine the whole thing into one data frame, then it's really easy. And that's like, if you look at the tutorials, that's what they'll tell you to do. I just personally find that workflow to be really non-intuitive, and it just seems to like add this extra step that I don't want to do. I'd rather just be able to use the data frames I want. And it is possible. I just need to think about it a little more. All right. Okay, everyone, have a great weekend. Next week, I'm going to be talking about something new again, data wrangling with tidyverse, and it'll be more about like using the sort of the tidyverse verbs and how to typing and when you might want to use typing. And if that's like, wow, what is that? What is typing? Okay. Tune in next week to find out what typing is. All right. Ciao, everyone. Okay, you can go ahead and shut down the recording.
Okay, perfect. Stop recording.